Students, welcome back. We're going to keep talking about properties of exponents. Today we're going to look at what happens when we divide exponents that have the same base. So we just looked at multiplication. Today we're going to look at division. And so I want to start by doing what's called expanded form and looking at these in expanded form and then learning the shortcut, kind of like what we did with multiplication. So if I think about this, 7 to the 5th is the same as 7 times 7 times 7 times 7 times 7. And I'm dividing that by 7 to the 3rd. 7 times 7 times 7. Now I want you to think about fractions. When I have something like 7 over 7, 7 divided by 7 is 1. So every common factor that we have in the numerator and the denominator, we can actually cancel those out. So these 7s cancel, these 7s cancel, these 7s cancel. So what we can see happening is that we still have 7 times 7 in our numerator, or 7 to the 2nd power, but in our denominator we have nothing. So we would say that that's the same thing as multiplying it by 1. So what we end up with is 7 to the 2nd power. Now some of you might be noticing, oh look, 5 and 3, if we subtract those, we would end up with 7 to the 2nd power. So that is our shortcut for division, is that if we have the same base, so we're looking here, we notice same thing with variables, x and x, we keep the base the same, and we subtract the exponents. 10 minus 9 would give us x to the 1st power. Now technically we don't need to write the 1, but if it asked for it in exponential form, that would be exponential form. If it wanted it in simplified form, we could just write x. Okay, so we're going to learn one more rule today about our exponents before we look at some tricky situations on the next video. But today we're next going to look at what's called a power to a power. So here's an example of a power to a power. It looks really funky because we've got parentheses, we've got two exponents next to each other, and all that this is telling us is that c to the 3rd power, c times c times c, is happening twice. That's why there's that exponent there. So really what we've got is c times c times c, that's 1 time, and c times c times c, that's 2 times, or c to the 3rd times c to the 3rd. Just another way of writing it. So we can see when we write it in expanded form that there are 6 c's being multiplied together. Or if we think back to the last video, we have the same base, we could add our exponents. Now some of you might already be picking up on the shortcut here. So when we have a power to a power, 3 times 2 gives us 6. So this is where it's going to start to get a little bit complicated and a little bit tricky, as now we start to pull all of those different properties together. And we're going to have to be careful that we don't get the properties mixed up. So let's practice power to a power for a second. So here's our next 2 examples. Now I encourage you at first to actually write them out in expanded form. So this would be 5 to the 4th times 5 to the 4th, or 5 to the 8th power. Again, the shortcut could have been 4 times 2 is 8. So this next one, I'm going to try using the shortcut. I'm going to keep the base, and the shortcut would be to multiply 7 times 9, which would give me 6 to the 63rd power. We're going to look at one more tricky situation before we end this video today, and that's where we start to add a little bit more. So looking at this first example, again, I'm going to start by expanding it out, and then I'm going to show you a shortcut. This would be 2x happening 3 times. So that would be 2x times 2x times 2x. And then if I rearrange that, I have 2 times 2 times 2 times x times x times x. Now, depending on what the directions said, if it said exponential form, I would write 2 to the third times x to the third. If it said to simplify, I would actually multiply out. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8x to the third. Now, there is a slightly quicker way where we can eliminate these two steps in the middle, and I know some of you are going to really like that quicker way. And the quicker way is to actually distribute out that exponent, distribute it to the 3, so 3 to the second power, distribute it to the x to the second power, and distribute it to the y to the second power. And then we could simplify 3 times 3, so 9x squared, y squared. Now, like I said, this is a little tricky, so take a little time to practice, and we'll check back in soon.